All right, so first of all, I have here, I'm holding my hand, a synopsis from the Internet Movie Database, otherwise known as IMDb. Very well respected, rather than just kind of freestyle it and just rant and stuff like that. I'm going to try to go through this very methodically. I'm going to be looking through this synopsis line by line so I don't miss nothing, and just giving you my thoughts on what I thought of it when I was watching it. In all likelihood, I'm going to do another video where I discuss watching it for a second time. That will be a second video. So let's get right to this. We have the opening credits. Obviously, it's a crawl. It's an episode. You always want to see a crawl in the episodes. I have no problem with that. And then we see Poe Dameron and BB-8 coming upon the ship, and obviously a lot has been said about the conversation with General Hux, whether it was funny or not funny. My take on that, guys, is that it didn't go over well with me. I didn't find it funny. To be perfectly honest, I didn't really fully understand it. I was a little confused by it. The way it was set up was a little ambiguous. Like he was saying, are you there? Are you not there? And I just kind of got lost in it. I got lost in the joke so much that it wasn't funny, because I really didn't understand what the punchline was supposed to be. I just got lost in it, to be perfectly honest. And then it seemed a little tedious, and then it just felt like it amounted to probably about like 5 or 6 exchanges, right? And to be perfectly honest, as I was watching it, it just seemed like it was like 2 or 3 exchanges too long. You know what I mean? Like, okay, they're making a little banter, quippy type of thing, but it should have just been like two or three exchanges, and that's it. But this seemed to like just carry it on unnecessarily, and it's just kind of got a little cringy. So no, I wasn't too carried away by it. I didn't find it funny. I just found it basically pretty tedious. The battle was very exhilarating. Have no problems with the fight scene. They obviously know how to do a fight scene very well. It was very exciting. No problems with that. It was pretty captivating to see, those big bombardier ships. There's like 4 of them. It's sort of meant to be sort of retro-ish, that they were dropping bombs just like the old bombers and whatever World War that was, when they was dropping bombs. I get it. They combining retro with modern technology. Yes, it was very captivating and intriguing the way they design these type of ships. Having said that, it just seems illogical that this type of ship is designed. It just seemed illogical that to utilize this ship the way it needs to be utilized, it has to be, let's think about it, logically, it requires that the ship be directly over the target, which just by itself means that it's in harm's way, because obviously it has to be within meters of the target ship. And how does that big ass slow moving ship not get blown out of the sky by any kind of defenses that this massive ship would have? I mean, the Dreadnought, if it's such a ship as deadly and dangerous as it is, how does it not have the least little weaponry to blow up a ship like that. That said, also, the ship has like no deflectors or anything like that, so it's just vulnerable to the least type of damage. And as we saw, the ship can be totally destroyed and incapacitated by shrapnel from a neighboring ship. I mean, that's how two of them were destroyed. One ship got shot on, that exploded, and when that one exploded, the shrapnel from that hit a second ship, causing that ship to explode, and on, domino effect. Part of the design flaw, or the flaw in the strategy of these ships, is that not only, if you're going to have 3 or 4, they all have to be directly over the target, which means that they are all in close proximity to each other. Thereby, they are necessarily in harm's way of each other if one gets damaged or blown up. So that type of, design of the ship and how it has to be utilized really doesn't make sense. Though it's visually stunning, visually intriguing, logically from a weapons point of view, a craft weaponry design point of view, it just doesn't, the utilization of it, the implementation of such a craft seems quite flawed, extremely flawed. Okay, then we have Paige Tico, probably the most dedicated, loyal, and even-headed person in the damn movie, who gets killed off in the first 10 minutes, whatever. Unfortunately, sadly, but she's asked to drop these bombs. I'm going to overlook the fact that they depend on gravity in the middle of space, which defies physics and all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna overlook that, even though that's an obvious problem. But then again, everyone's walking around on these ships like there's gravity. When how do they walk around on all these ships in the middle of space like there's gravity on the ships? So if we can overlook that, we can overlook that there's a ship that drops bombs through the bombardier hatch doors onto an oncoming ship. So Paige Tico is instructed to drop the bombs. She tries to, but the hatch is not open, or whatever the hell was the problem. She has to do it manually with the remote. And she goes down there. She's laying down. She gets knocked around, and she's nearly incapacitated. She drops the remote trigger, and let's face it, this lady arguably has the fastest reflexes in the world, because come on guys, you saw that movie, that trigger, that thing had passed her by. Come on, don't even, that she was laying there, she was laid flat. That trigger literally passed the plane of her head. She's laying on her back, nothing, her hands weren't moving. Somehow she snatched that thing. Don't know how she did it. Okay, dramatic effect, but she got it. It triggered, blew everything up. Success, blah blah blah. Overall, I would say it's a cool scene, very logical on a lot of levels, but it was still, I would say, action and visually satisfying. So he gets back to the ship. Princess Leia basically dresses him down for disobeying the orders, etc., etc. And then on the other hand, Snoke dresses Hux down for letting him get away off the planet, and then dresses Kylo Ren down to the point of humiliating him, to the point that he crushes his helmet in the elevator. Meanwhile, Finn wakes up from a coma or whatever the hell he was in, from the hospital bed. He's got water bags all over his body, and he's walking around. The water bags are all leaking. You know, why he needed those many water bags is mind-boggling. One IV bag should have been sufficient. If he was so healthy enough that he could wake up from a coma, why did he need 6 IV bags? He's walking around, there's leaking. Obviously it's a sight gag. To be perfectly honest, I didn't find it was funny at all. I didn't hear a lot of people laughing, you know, when I saw it. It just seemed kind of cringy, not funny. I get it, trying to have a little sight gag. It just didn't work for me. Just being honest. Again, at this point now, you say, "Oh, you just mad at the film and you just weren't going to let nothing be funny." No, guys, this is like what, in the first 10-15 minutes. I haven't seen enough of the film not to like the film yet. So it's not like I was prejudiced against anything funny because I was mad at the film. I had not seen enough of the film even not to be mad at it yet. So honestly, I was still ready to laugh and everything, just didn't find it to be funny. So meanwhile, Rey lands on Luke's, I guess it was an island. Octo, is that what it's called? Confronts him, hands him the lightsaber. He tosses it over his shoulder. Again, another sight gag, but a sight gag at a very critical moment. Did not make sense. I get it, they want to make a little sight gag, but just seemed totally out of place, totally inappropriate. Can't see Luke Skywalker doing that in a million years. Really, really can't. Even look, it just a little. It was like a little flippant kind of thing. We don't know Luke Skywalker to do little flippant kind of things like that. That's not his style to do things like that. There's a little being snarky and salty. That's when have you seen Luke Skywalker behave like that? And now you're gonna say, "Oh yeah, but see, now it's been a long time, and he's now a broken down man, and now he's disgruntled and all this kind of stuff." Look, I don't see him. I don't get that. I don't get that. This man is a master of the Force. He's arguably the most powerful Force wielder in the galaxy. You're going to say, "No, hold on now, Snook. It seemed like he was more powerful." Look, Luke Skywalker's been in the game a long time. You want to say, "Oh no, but Snook's older, so don't go there. Don't say Luke Skywalker was been around longer." Look, I'm sure Snook wasn't a bad guy all along. He was probably a good guy at some point that went bad, though we'll never know, apparently, unless there's a prequel for Snook. But Luke Skywalker's most powerful Force wielder in the galaxy. Let's just presume that for now. Okay, so I just can't see him being all casual and dismissive about his lightsaber. I can't see him getting to that point. Sorry, did not make sense. It was probably meant to be a little startling and maybe a little funny, but it was just too out of character. It was just like jaw dropping to see him do that. I just could not wrap my head around that. Still can't wrap my head around it. So that was my take on that. I'm I'm going to take it a little bit out of chronological order. Now, so they did just do some training, or at least it's supposed to be training. And what it amounted to is him talking to her about philosophy. They really, she lifted some rocks, some pebbles. That was like the least training possible. Is so little that you couldn't even really legitimately call it training, could you? What they did, they fought for like a half a second, like just practice. I mean, they fought like out of anger. I forget what she said, but they was annoyed with each other, and they fought like very briefly. It wasn't planned, just like a little impulsive, spontaneous fight, if I recall correctly. And he kind of lost to her, as I recall. That wasn't training. That was just like a little petty, a little petty fist fight. You know what I'm saying? So I'm very disappointed with the so-called training. I'll talk about that more when I do my seeing the movie for a second time review. Then with Kylo Ren and the fighter, Princess Leia is on the bridge. He hesitates, yet his wingmen take out the bridge. Princess Leia is blown off the bridge into space in a fireball. Let's not dress it up. It was a damn fireball. I saw a description here that says she was sucked out into space from the blast. Look, that's trying to. I know what you're doing. You're trying to make it sound like the blast blew out the window and it was all sucked out, pretty much intact, and that way, if you're intact, you're still able to use the force to get back inside the shot. That when you say it like that, that's where you're going. But I'm not having it, because that was a fuss and a fireball that took out the bridge. If that was you and me, we wouldn't just be sucked out into space. We'd be little burnt toast crispies flapping around. We wouldn't even have time. There wouldn't be anything to suck out into space. We would just be little crumbs, little burnt crumbs on that bridge. So don't try and make it like, oh, it blew out the window of the bridge, thereby sucking everybody out. No, everybody there, and it showed it. It's not like I'm just speculating. It showed that everybody on the bridge was literally consumed in the fireball. They specifically, literally showed that. And Princess Leia, General Leia, had her back turned to the window, so she got it good. She really took it. There's no denying that. Find out later she's out in space. Apparently not a scratch, no burns, clothes, no marks. Use the force to pull herself onto the ship. Who knew that she was so skilled to be able to display the force? Now, the scene obviously referred to as Mary Poppins and all this kind of stuff, the Superman, whatever you want to call it. Now the defenders are going to say, oh no, but it just didn't take much force to pull her through weightlessness back inside the ship. Okay. But there is a significant issue with her surviving that blast. Okay, and I have a major problem with that. Now, let's get back to Finn. He's on the ship. He's looking to get an escape pod or something or other, and he's looking to go find Ray. Okay, we buy that. They encounters Rose Tico, and I'll have a lot to say about her. Probably make a whole video about her. Encounters her, and she's like total fangirl. Did she even say I'm a fan? She may have even said like I'm a huge fan, blah blah blah. And yeah, I get that what Finn did was very important. Was enough to be really a hero. I really wasn't thinking of him as a hero. I can't really imagine that he, what he did would create sort of a fandom. So I did find that a little odd, but not, in that context, just meeting her, didn't find it all that odd. I mean, just meeting her, thought it was unusual, but I guess I could live with it at the moment. Then they get to talking about the fact that there must be a tracker, and then they start hypothesizing about the tracker, and then it goes into the thing. Oh, but wait a minute, how did he know that we went into light speed? He must have a tracker. She said, oh yeah, must have a tracker. And then but if they have a tracker, it would be on the first ship. Yeah, it must be on the first ship. But if we could devise a code to disable the tracker, we should be good, right? No, because then they could move it to the second ship, and it only works when it's in the first ship. I mean, they had some kind of exchange. To be perfectly honest, still don't even understand that discussion about it has to be can't be on the lead ship. It has to be on the second ship, but that would disable it wouldn't be enough. So they would probably move it. How do they know all this stuff? Everything that they're saying is just pure speculation. So how are they so precise about everything? And how would they even know that it requires a code? That's just speculation. So they had this detailed discussion about the tracker that they couldn't possibly know. It was all speculation, yet they're willing to fly all around the galaxy to get the code. It just found all that little discussion about the tracker and how they disable it and moving around is just very, very tedious and contrived. Very tedious and contrived. Still, I wish someone would still explain it to me. That's how tedious and contrived and silly whatever it was supposed to be about the tracker that they are speculating existed. So later on, as part of that mission, they realize they're going to need a code breaker. So they go to Maz Renata, and because apparently she's like they imply she was like the only person who was skilled enough with code breaking to do this job. Meanwhile, she's indisposed with her own issues. She said, oh no, see, I can't do it right now. Obviously, I'm in the middle of a whole thick of things, and I'm going to, if I can't do it, there's maybe like only one other person in the galaxy who could do this thing, besides me, of course, and that would be the Master Code Breaker is on Canto Bight. Go find him on Canto Bight, and your problem is solved. So they head out to Canto Bight. How they just land this thing on a planet without any kind of security, no one's stopping them. Like you said, random craft can just land on your planet. They don't know what the intentions are. They can just do that. It's mind-boggling. Now you're gonna say, no, hold on. You're right. They can't just do that. That's why they were arrested, because they were illegally parked. Look, you coming out from space. This time system is way in the future. They know they should be able to detect when something's approaching. Even we can detect in our present time, we can detect when something's 5 million miles away approaching us. So they can detect them light years in the future. They can detect when a spaceship is entering the airspace that they don't recognize. Why don't they have security systems to say, who are you? Why are you coming into our airspace? We're going to send an escort, or we're going to shoot you down, blah, blah, blah. No, they got as far as landing and getting out the ship and going to the casino, having a good time, blah, 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 before they're even confronted or recognized. I don't even recall that they got spoken to on the hailing frequency. Excuse me, who are you? What are your intentions? Blah, blah, blah. Did that happen? I don't remember that. I really don't. If it did, someone let me know. I don't remember that. The first encounter was they already landed on the planet and they're walking around doing what they have to do regardless of their intentions. Obviously, that didn't make much sense there. They land up in jail, and wouldn't you know, if you didn't find the master code breaker, as luck will have it, you happen to run into only the third person in the galaxy that could pull this job off. He happens to be in the same jail cell as you. We don't even know why. They just happen to, just by coincidence, be in the same cell. What luck is that? What are the odds of that? So that did tend to bother me a little bit. That coincidence would play itself out like that. Boy, it did. All right. So finally, they escape. They go down to the stables. They release those animals. They riding around on the animals, fleeing the police, whoever they're fleeing from. Which now, so this is really a CGI fest, with CGI animals. Finn and Rose are CGI placed on top of the animals, and they're galloping and they running through CGI fields and everything. It's just a big CGI fest. So if you like that type of thing, then that's like just eye candy. I was just really indifferent. I wasn't saying, oh wow, this is so exciting and this is just mind-boggling. It just seemed a little played and tedious to me, personally. Didn't really find it gratifying or enjoyable. I'm pretty much indifferent to it, to be perfectly honest. Meanwhile, Vice Admiral Holdo has a plan. She's not going to discuss with Poe. We don't really know why, but she has a plan. Just trust me. I know what I'm doing. If you don't want to do things my way, that's an insubordination. So just basically just shut up and let me do my thing. I know what I'm doing. Blah blah blah. So back on Luke's planet, they get what they're calling training. Really wasn't training. We see the I forget the name, the island keepers, and you have the porgs and the caretakers. And they had their own little comic sequences. I don't have a major problem with that. There's a little scene where Rey slices the rock, it tumbles down, hits a lady's wheelbarrow, and she's like totally annoyed. And other little scenes like that. Don't really have a problem with that. There was a scene where Chewbacca's eating the porg, or attempting to eat the porg, and the little porg was totally distressed by it. So I thought that was kind of funny. I thought that was an effective sight gag, but they kind of overplayed it. It went like a beat too long. Like they showed the porg, distressed, and that was like a little funny moment. Then I think Chewbacca was like going to like ignore it and go for like another bite. Then they went back to the distressed porg like a second time, and I thought like they took it, they extended it too long. They should have just left it for the sharp little concise scene that it was in the beginning. That's my only little complaint with that. Then of course back on the island, he does the whole thing with the milking that animal. The animal probably has some type of name. I don't know the name. Who does he really even care the breed of that animal? At any rate, he milked that animal and drank that animal's milk. It was gross, and it was supposed to be gross and nasty. They really made it gross and nasty with it hanging up in his beard and all that kind of stuff. So that was obviously intentional to make it look kind of gross and nasty. A lot of people had a problem with that. I don't have a major problem with that. I just thought that, I'm looking at myself and just thinking, I don't know this guy. This guy is just so totally unlike the Luke Skywalker I know. I don't even recognize this guy. Who is this guy? He's just lost it. So that was just really disturbing. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I thought of that. So there is a scene where he does meet up with Yoda, and they have at this point Yoda is what we're going to call a Force ghost. I think is what we're calling Yoda at this point. And they get to talking about the knowledge in the temple and the books and stuff like that. And there's a question whether the books were destroyed in the fire or not destroyed in the fire. And I saw a number of people in their videos, talk about this point, that were the books burned up or not burned up? Were they saved? Did Raya keep them because he says Raya has everything she needs to know? Does that mean that you could destroy the books and she didn't really need the books anymore? Or are you implying that she has everything she needs to know because she has the books? So when I saw it the first time, I was a little unclear on this point, and frankly when I first saw it, it wasn't even really keyed into that little issue about the books. It wasn't until I saw people talking about it a lot in their videos that I said, I wasn't even following that point about the books. But now that you are raising it, I'm curious to understand it for myself if and when I see it a second time. So I will go into a little more detail about that point when I do my seeing it for a second time video. And meanwhile, while on the Luke's planet, he talks to Rey about where this whole problem with Kylo Ren arose from, and the whole issue of he felt Kylo Ren was too far gone onto the dark side to really be saved. I guess you could put it that way. That he was let me say this properly. He was tempted to kill basically Kylo Ren in his sleep, and that whole little I guess I'll call it misunderstanding when Kylo Ren woke up, caused Kylo Ren to go bad, and basically turn dark, and that whole little issue just didn't seem believable, didn't seem plausible. You know, this guy is literally, Kylo Ren is literally a blood relative, and we just have never seen Luke Skywalker to really give up on somebody, even his father. So it just seemed improbable, illogical, and way out of character for him to address the problem that way. No, he wouldn't do that. That's just, I can't buy that. That's just too. Now you're gonna say, yeah, no, but hold on now. He caught himself and he changed his mind, blah, blah, blah. No, you can't say it that way. You know, you can't have it both ways. He went there into that room in the dark of night with that intent. I just can't imagine him having that mindset to want to do that. I just can't wrap my head around it. Can't see that happening. Okay, so now Rey agrees to go to Snoke's palace and try to reason with Kylo Ren. Agrees to meet Snoke, I guess. I mean, she went there knowing that she was going to be captured, and I knew she would probably be taken to Snoke. And she thought that she could save Kylo Ren, and you know, in the midst of this, she gets flopped around by Snoke, and long story short, they kill Snoke. He's impaled by a lightsaber, and then it also slices it in half, and then they get to fighting all these guys with the exotic weapons and whatnot. And yeah, that was like one of the highlights of the movie, frankly. Yeah, that's a scene that you could watch again and again and again. And if you was ever going to watch, you know, a lightsaber scene with exotic light weapons, you know, that was like the scene, you know, the scene to watch. So I have no problems with that. Very satisfying. Then we think Kylo Ren is on the good side, but then he's not on the good side. And, you know, they kind of go their separate ways. Now, in the meantime, we get into the whole thing about Rey's parents. And long story short, as we all know, she says they was nobodies. They sold her for drinking money. They're in a grave. Blah blah blah. We know the lines. And the dialogue is very carefully worded. So much so that when I watched it a second time, I really wanted to hear exactly what he said. And if you listen carefully, it wasn't as unequivocal as it sounded the first time I heard it. And I'll get to that probably in another video. But first of all, with him saying it, I just had no reason to believe that he would know. First of all, like, why would he know who her parents were? And secondly, why would you believe him? He's like the least believable person to believe. So, no, I don't take what he said, even if he was saying it. I mean, I happen to think he wasn't really saying it, but sort of reiterating what she was thinking. Well, at any rate, even if he was saying it, even if he said, I know who your parents are, and said who her parents were, I would have no reasons. I wouldn't take what he said on face value. He's the least credible person in the whole movie. And you say, wait a minute now, Snoke was probably the least credible. No, Snoke just told the truth. He just told her how it was. He had no, See, he didn't have to lie about anything because he was so powerful. He could just tell the truth, and everyone else had to suck it up. So no, Snook didn't have to lie about anything. He totally explained his plot to bring them together by manipulating the forced communications and stuff that he manipulated. He laid it all out. He said, "Look, I know everything, and this is what I did." He was totally unapologetic about it. So no, he didn't have to lie about anything. So he was very credible about everything. He was saying Kylo Ren was the lie master, just very manipulative, couldn't be trusted, very conflicted about everything. So no, I don't believe anything he said. I would have no reason to take what he said as face value if I thought he was, just reciting what he knew about the situation. Frankly, I see no reason why he would know anything about the situation. So that's my take on that. Okay, so then we have a scene where the rebels are escaping in the transporters, and they're being picked off one by one. And Vice Admiral Holder says, "No, I'll stick around. I'm going to go down with the ship." And in a very dramatic moment, she turns the ship toward the fighters and seemingly sacrifices herself, jumps into light speed through the lead ship and apparently some other ships, and that might be probably the most memorable visual moment of the film. Probably a moment worth, that alone is probably worth seeing the movie again. So yeah, that was the most visually satisfying moment of the film, even though literally it was probably like 5 seconds, if that much. So yeah, incredible tension when you saw it happening, or when you saw it setting up, because we've never even conceived of this type of thing. Having said that, it's one of those things where you say, "Oh, that was like so cool," but on the other hand, it just opens up so many kind of worms of like, wait a minute now. If you could do this, why weren't other people doing it? Why weren't they doing this all along? Why weren't they driving ships into the Death Star? Why weren't they destroying ships like this before? Why weren't they sending little small ships driven by droids into bigger ships? It just opened up a kind of worms of why no one ever thought of this before. You would think that at some point in the whole time scheme, it happened by accident at least once, and someone said, we could kind of do this intentionally. Like it just seemed like, now you're raising all this speculation about why it wasn't been done before, and now in all the future movies you say, why don't you just do that thing Holdo did? So it's just opens up a can of worms in my view. Meanwhile, Finn and Rose are trying to escape from Snook's ship. They eventually encounter Phasma. A lot of people felt that scene was either too short, and Phasma was underutilized, etc., etc. That the scene could have been more dramatic. Their fight could have been more dramatic. I guess I would say I'm kind of indifferent to it. I think, in the movies at least, she really did not have a lot to do or say, in her in The Force Awakens, and even this film had very little to do. So her appearing was almost like a cameo, if you want to call it that. And I know a lot of people know her from the universe and know her whole story and backstory on this and that. May have a bigger connection to her than the moviegoer, but I was, unaffected one way or the other. that their fight was a little, underwhelming and not more spectacular. So now we're on Crate, and Kylo Ren and his ships are approaching, and so they're all in those little kind of skipper ships that are skipping along, skimmer ships, skimming along. Rose crashes into Finn, knocks him off his path. And Finn is thinking, I'm going to be the hero. I'm going to save the day. I'm ready to meet the Maker. Huge statues is going to be made of me. And Rose just knocks him off path, totally destroys the plan, speaks some gibberish. I'm not even going to give what she said the credibility to repeat it. It's just so silly and crazy and psycho, and that's something a psycho ex-girlfriend would do. And there wasn't even a thing. Okay, Bush. That's like something a psycho ex-girlfriend would do. It's like ram your car when you're on your way to see your new girlfriend, like at an intersection. Oh, because you're making a mistake. You don't know the truth about her. I got screenshots. You don't, wait until you see them. You need to listen to me. She's not good for you. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. She's not who you think she is. Blah, blah, blah. That's something a psycho ex-girlfriend would do. And Rose wasn't even a girlfriend. She's just a friend, just stalking the guy, basically. I just found that just totally disturbing. It's still disturbing. It's disturbing me right now just thinking about it. That's my thoughts on that. I'll probably take that up in another video, just, all about that aspect of it. So moving on, Luke shows up on the scene. He meets with Leia. I'm probably going to talk about that in a separate video. They talk. He goes out, has this fight. Really, they attack him with all the weaponry, and when the smoke clears, he walks out and kind of brushes off his shoulder, which in the moment, for a split second, I thought that was really badass and cool. And then after the split second wore off of the moment, I just couldn't help say to myself, Luke Skywalker doesn't act like that. He's not so arrogant like that. He's not really, he doesn't show bravado like that. That's not his style, to be thinking like that. We've just never really seen that kind of sentiment come out of Luke Skywalker. So I just had I just didn't like the sentiment behind it. I'll harken back to when he threw the lightsaber over his shoulder. It's like that's just a cheap shot. You might have gotten a little rise out of people for a split second, but when you just step back and think about it logically, you realize that's not the Luke that we know. That the humble, task-oriented guy that we know and love. He just doesn't do stuff like that. We've never known him to do stuff like that. Why are you putting that in there? That was totally unnecessary. And then they fight. It turns out he's an astral projection. Well, who knew? Because we're not really familiar with astral projections. And in fact, apparently no one can detect it. It's just so believable and so authentic. Wow. Despite, Kylo Ren being pretty force sensitive. but I guess not force sensitive enough to detect an astral projection. And to boot, it takes so much energy for Luke to pull this off. He dies in the process, and I just found that totally unnecessary, totally disappointing, really a travesty, really a travesty to not have this guy in the first installment, and when you finally have him in the second installment, just show him as a broken down, grumpy guy who doesn't do anything spectacular, doesn't do anything meaningful. You could say, oh, he did do something meaningful. He distracted them while they escaped. That's his legacy. That's what's going on in his tombstone. He distracted the rebels. He distracted Kylo Ren while the other people escaped. That's what we're going to know him for, and died in the astral projection. That's how Luke Skywalker goes out. That's just, and now, he's not going to be, technically he's not going to be in 9 unless there's some kind of contrivance. So now he's a Force ghost to some form that maybe they'll invent some third, maybe they'll invent some other type of apparition, some way he can appear. It's just really a travesty. You go through trouble to bring the guy back after 40 years, and this guy is like a most proficient Force wielder in the galaxy by this time. As he was advanced in Return of the Jedi, it just stands to reason that by now he's just super advanced, like beyond imagination. We as fans of the franchise deserved, and I don't want to hear anybody talking about pandering to fan service and that stuff. We as fans deserve to see Luke Skywalker in the ultimate spectacular battle. Now that we're in 2018, with all the digital CGI technology money can buy, you had an opportunity to make the most spectacular Force battle imaginable, and that fight probably would have been the most talked about scene possibly in film history, if you think about it. Probably the most talked about scene in the whole franchise of 8 movies. And you squandered it because you thought it was more, I don't even want to try to defend it or try to rationalize it and give it some type of defense. I'm not even going to try to do that. Somehow you felt that was more, I don't even know what you thought it was. It was a travesty. It was offensive. He deserved to go out in a blaze of glory. You could say, oh, well, it's just going to be just a big CGI mess. It's just going to be a CGI fest with just, $100 million of CGI effects, blah, blah, blah. And I would say, yeah, I don't care if the whole thing is CGI. I don't care if he's CGI. That then could be 99.9% all CGI. The weapons, the fights, the terrain, the throwing people around, choking people, bending those landwalker things, and ripping people in half, and bending stuff, and bending lightsabers, and twisting. Who could, just think of the most spectacular fight scene that you can imagine, and just allow those CGI people to just sit around a table and think of ways that they would just trick us the hell out with stuff. Why couldn't we see that? Why couldn't you do that? What was the big deal that you didn't want to do that? Oh, it costs too much because the expectations would be so high that we'd probably have to spend $150 million just for that one little sequence. What the hell? That movie would make $3 billion. I know this movie made $1 billion, something there. That movie would have made $3 billion and be the most talked about movie in Star Wars history. And you figured, no, that's okay. We're just going to save the money and have him vanish with his shirt flapping in the breeze. That's what we feel was more satisfying and made more sense. That, guys, is just a load of crap. No one's buying that. No, I don't get it. If you said, no, I buy into it, I get it, I like it, I'm down with that, then I don't know where you're coming from with that, because that was truly disappointing, unfulfilling, everything. I could think of 10 more adjectives, but I think you've caught the gist of what I'm talking about there. Moving on, in the end, there's trapped in the cave, and then Rey has to escape more TIE fighters, and the obligatory Millennium Falcon being chased by TIE fighters, saying that this shows up literally in every movie. I don't know whether now it's sort of like an obligation. Is that pandering to fan service? Yeah, it's pandering to fan service. Do I have a problem with it? No, I don't have a problem with it. The way I'm talking about it makes it seem like I'm a little, cynical about it, but I get it. They had to do that, and you gotta kind of want to put that in. You gotta put that in the Solo movie. You gotta put it in all these movies, basically. If the Millennium Falcon is going to be in a movie, then you basically have to have a scene with him being chased with TIE fighters and the Millennium Falcon maneuvering through mountains and craters and all this type of stuff is just now kind of expected. Just kind of expected now. I guess I am being a little cynical, because it is like in every movie. They kind of contrive a way to put it in every movie, which I guess I'm being a little cynical about the way that they have to contrive a way in every movie to put it in there. Having said that, I'm okay. That was in the movie. Getting back to the plot, they save the day. They're back on the ship. Leia survives, surprisingly, and they move on to another episode. Just a little surprised that Leia was alive at the end. I think we all thought when she got blown out the ship and she was dead, and we understood it. Oh, okay, so that's what happened. So okay, we can live with that. She went out, without in style. We're okay with it. A little early in the movie, but I get it. Okay, we're fine. No, it turns out she didn't die. She saved herself, for lack of a better word, and she's in a lot more of the movie. I would have, in as much as they're talking about, oh, well, she's definitely not going to be in 9, they're not going to digitally recreate her, they're not going to use any doubles, they're not going to use lost footage, they probably write her out in a crawl or just refer to the fact that she died. I have a problem with that. I feel that she should have gone out better than that in some other type of plot device, plot construction. Just having her referred to as gone, or have her written out in a crawl, or just people may, oh yeah, by the way, General Leia died in a boating accident. I mean, she deserved better. She deserved to go out in a more dramatic way, in a way that served a purpose to the saga, served a purpose to her legacy, to put her relationship with the Force in some type of legacy perspective. And yeah, you can think of ways to do that. Don't tell me, oh well, the fact that she created just too many constraints to do it properly, and just couldn't do it with proper service, seeing it has the no, look, blah blah blah. I don't buy that. This is 2018 Hollywood. They can create anything that they want, anything that their mind can think of. They can put it out there, and they could have found some respectful way to have her go out in a more satisfying way, rather than just, yeah, she was on the ship and she just went out peacefully and said goodbye to everybody, and now we're just going to find out as an anecdote what happened to her. And I don't buy that. Now they're going, oh no, hold on. You see, don't jump the gun. Wait for it. You're going to find out that they did something very respectful. Okay, well, I hope so, because the way they left it is very unsatisfying. So that's two people that left us unsatisfyingly, Luke Skywalker and his sister. So that brings us to the end of the movie. Let me just check them and see that I covered everything. I'm not leaving any important parts out. If I missed anything, make a comment down below. If you think I didn't comment on an important part that you wanted me to comment on, and maybe I'll pick it up later. But be advised that this is the second installment. Got plenty more installments to go where I'm going to go into detail with a lot of these different elements of the story and a lot of events. I'm going to go in a lot deeper. For example, the Mary Poppins scene, for example, the Holdo scene, for example. So I'm certainly in a position to address anything that you think I didn't cover, that you wanted me to cover. So if you have anything like that, feel free to comment down below. So I'd like to thank you for joining me today for the second installment. I hope you like my review. Probably one of the next reviews is probably going to be my thoughts on seeing the movie a second time. But otherwise, I will see you next time. Thanks for stopping in today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye, guys.